I guess I could go ahead and start. I feel like I have my back to the audience, but I know that you're the audience, so I'll talk to you. Good evening. I am Marge Ennis, a member of the League of Women Voters of Adams County. As an aside, the League of Women Voters, and incidentally, we have many men members, was founded in 1920 when women got the right to vote nationally. Colorado much earlier, of course, to inform the public about what and who was on the ballot. And here we are again tonight talking about what and who was on the ballot. For those of you here tonight to support your candidate, please do it quietly. We don't have time for demonstrations, and it doesn't look like we'll have too many. League members with me are Kirk Sorrell and Beth Vieira, sitting up in the back. They are going to mind the time. Yellow means 30 seconds left when she holds up her yellow sign. Okay, hold it so that the light shines on it. Hold it back a little bit so that they can see it out there. Can you tell that's yellow? Red means finish your sentence, and that's it. Kathy O'Grady, Melvin, is going to help me with the questions from the audience, and Joanne Vondraschek and her husband are going to have cards and pencils to give you if you have a question, and that's those of you in the audience. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. They'll come and hand you a pencil and a card, and when you're done, they'll take it back and bring it to us. Not all the questions may get asked. At the end of the meeting, if your question is not answered, look for your candidate. We will start with opening statements. Candidates will have 2 minutes, and they will be introducing themselves and say whatever you want to say about what you're planning to do. You can include these ideas. Why do you want to serve in this position? What makes Thornton a great place to live? Can you make us all wish that we lived here? What changes, if any, would you like to see made concerning how the city is run? What do you see as the major 2 or 3 issues? And what do you think the solutions are? Okay. I don't know. Can you see me? I guess you can. Okay, the first question will be, we're going to do the 60 seconds. Excuse me. Okay, let's start with Justin. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then talk up. You have 2 minutes, so go ahead and talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Justin Martinez, and I'm running for Thornton City Council in Ward 1. I've been living in South Thornton for about 7 years now. Currently, I'm working as a software engineer, but I used to be an economist for the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and that's really where I got my first taste of local government and how important it is to the community and to everybody. So, and I'm most importantly, though, I'm a father of 2 young kids, and I've learned a lot from them. In fact, one of my daughters has a very rare genetic disorder, and when she was very young, we had to fight. We had to advocate for her. We went to doctors. We got MRIs. Ultimately, we found some genetic testing thanks to the really strong work of my wife, and it turns out she had a genetic disorder. And what I learned from her and what I learned from that time was that I was going to have to be an advocate for her for the rest of her life, and that being an advocate is something that everybody needs. and I've applied that lesson to community service. I think that one of the reasons that keeps me going and that makes me want to be a city council member is I'd like to be an advocate for those who need help and who are vulnerable, much like my daughter. And there's a lot of work to do in Ward 1. We have to, redo our infrastructure to help serve members of the community who need help, who have disabilities. We need to invest in the community and bring in new businesses and fight back against the blight that hasn't been addressed in many, many years. And advocacy is just, the overarching theme of my candidacy and why I want to be in Thornton City Council. So I'm doing this for my community, for my family, for my daughter, and I just would like to, keep working hard. So that's my intro.
Okay. Roberta?
Hello, everybody. I appreciate you all being here today. It's great to see so many community members here in the audience. I'm Roberta Ayala, and I'm running for City Council here in Ward 2. Just a little bit about my background. I was born in Denver, and I was raised right here in Thornton. My background is in organizing and in education. I currently work in higher ed. I'm also a proud graduate of Skyview High School, class of '97. My experiences in our community have fueled my strong belief in the power of us being able to get together and use our experiences to motivate and to also just to step up into this candidacy for City Council today. The issues I'd like to conquer in City Council are a few things that drive my my work and want me to make me move forward with our future brighter here in Thornton. First up, I'd like to make sure that we have safe drinking water. It's a fundamental human right for everybody, and everyone in our city should have access to it. I'd also like to invest in our infrastructure to make sure that we keep a close eye on the water quality that we have here now. No one should have to worry about the water that's coming into their home and out of their tap and worry about it being safe to drink. The next thing I'd like to focus on is public safety and clean neighborhoods. We all want to live in a place that's clean, safe, and where our kids can play outside safely and freely. And I'd like to make sure that our neighborhoods are well maintained. This means supporting our law enforcement, but it also means addressing the root causes of crime through social programs and mental health access. The next thing I'd like to look at is transparency and fairness in our government here in Thornton. I'd like to make sure that our government is accountable to all of us as the constituents and the residents of Thornton. And we should be able to also be sure that our campaign finance is transparent and that we all know how everybody's campaigns are being funded in our city. Also, I'd like to talk a little bit about co-governance. That's a really important aspect to making sure that our voices are heard in our city. To me, that means that we work with our community and not against them to make sure that we're doing the things that we'd like to have happen here in our city. Overall, I just want to make sure that I'm here for you as a council member in Thornton and Ward 2, and I'd appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you. Julia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I have always been a really strong believer in making sure that the community has access to our government and that there's transparency and accountability. And forums like these are so important, especially in nonpartisan races, because there's not a D or an R by somebody's name. There's not a quick way to know where people stand. And so I really appreciate forums like this because it gives us a chance to talk with you all about the issues and where we stand so that you can make an informed choice when you're casting your ballot in a couple of weeks. So my name is Julia Marvin. I'm running to be the next mayor of Thornton. My family, my dad grew up here in Thornton back in the 50s and the 60s. And so my grandparents lived here up until about the early 2000s. So I spent a lot of time here as a kid growing up. And then when my husband and I were able to finally afford our first home, which was thanks to a first-time home buyer's grant grant program. We chose Thornton because we just loved this community. We loved the open spaces. We love, finding different hidden gems in the city, and it was just a really great place to live, and where, we wanted to settle our family. So I've served on city council for the past 4 years in the Ward 2 seat. During that time, it's been really important to me that the people have a voice on council. It's been really important that I'm here to represent my community and the people that live here. You're our bosses, and so you should be in charge. So I'm running for mayor because I think it's really important that we have a mayor that's innovative, thoughtful, and collaborative, and accessible to the people. I think you can see, who's here and who's not tonight. I think it's really telling. There's a lot of issues that we're facing as we're growing. It's things like making sure that we have housing people can afford, that we're protecting our open spaces and promoting sustainability, that we're supporting small businesses and our workers, and I want all of us to work together to tackle those problems. Thank you.
Okay. Mark Gormley.
Thank you. I am Mark Gormley, candidate for Ward 3 City Council. I am better at writing than in speech, so I'm going to stick to what I've written here. I think my message will come across better. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this event and inviting me. I am a father. My 2 daughters have gone through Adams 12 schools. One graduated from Regis University a couple of years ago. The other now attends Seattle University. I am extremely proud of both, and I want our city and our world to be a suitable place for them and for everyone. I am a technical writer. I research what I need to know, what I need to write about when I know little about it. I similarly research anything I want to know about so I'm informed. I can impart information and make decisions. I have lived in Ward 3 for 26 years. I am now a concerned citizen answering a call to action and service. I am not a political animal. My ladder ends with city council. I have no political aspirations beyond this. I just want to serve and do my part. I'll show up for work. I'll do the job I am hired to do by the voters of Ward 3. I'll be here when I am supposed to be. I am consistent, reliable, dependable. I'm never absent. In my entire life, which is 61 years, I've only called in sick to work one day. I want to represent the people and to break the chains that special interests currently use as their stranglehold on the city of Thornton. I want citizen control of government, not special interests. I want to make things better. I want to make things right. I'm not a product. I am a person, a father, a homeowner, a taxpayer, a citizen. I will be a civil servant when I am elected. I'll work. I'll show up. I ask Ward 3 to vote for Mark Gormley. Thank you.
Okay. Chris Russell.
One, thank you for having me this evening. It's great to see so many residents in attendance. My name is Chris Russell, for those of you who don't know me. I moved to Thornton, Colorado in 2007 after serving in the United States Air Force as a Department of Defense firefighter. Over the past 15 years, I've become a small business owner here in Thornton, started a family with my wife, Nicole, and have gotten involved with our community. Currently, I serve on Development Permits and Appeals Board. It's a local board here for the city of Thornton. Because of my time in the military and fire department, there's this burning innate desire for public servitude. It's an opportunity for me to give back to the community and continue that service in which I embarked on decades ago as a military person. City appointed officials and elected officials have this tremendous task before them in which the work they do is not always glorified or even well received, but nonetheless, it's very important. And I plan to contribute to that. What I believe are some key issues right now within Ward 4 and with our city is the transparency and inclusiveness between city council representation and our community. Reducing crime. We see a lot of opportunistic crime happening in Thornton right now, from petty theft to garages and cars being stolen. And we can achieve that through some education and working alongside our police department. And tertiary, I want to work on concise and strategic city planning. Thornton is slated to grow and grow significantly. If we don't spend the time now to put together the proper infrastructure and planning for that growth, we're going to have problems in the future. My background as a real estate professional qualifies me for this position and contribution to council. Thank you.
Okay. I think I had these down as 2-minute questions. So I will let you go if you go a little bit over, I don't care, because we have plenty of time. I think we'll start again with Chris, and we'll go back in the other direction. What steps do you intend to take to protect and enhance workers' rights and support union activities within Thornton, ensuring that employees have a voice in the workplace, conditions, and negotiations?
First, we need to ensure that the unions and the workforce are invited to the table for the conversations. The best source of information is always direct. Secondly, the usage of best value matrix contracting. Unions have established that and can be our partner in Thornton's projects. And statistically, it's proven that they come in on time and under budget, which is a great benefit for our city. Unions also establish fair benefits and a quality of life for the trades, for the individuals that are building our community. They also set up strong opportunities for retirement, which is something that is a benefit that should be entitled to everybody, and not having to worry in those later years of life of how you're going to survive and afford to live in our city.
Okay. Mark Gormley, would you like to take the same question? I'll read it again. What steps do you intend to take to protect and enhance workers' rights and support union activities within Thornton, ensuring that employees have a voice in the workplace conditions and negotiations?
I'll start off by saying the first thing Chris said was making sure everybody's at the table. I did interview with a few of the unions, and I'm in a learning curve as I go along the way here now. As I'm finding out, there's a lot, even at 61, I don't know, and it's great to start learning more. I can't say that I'm well studied in all this, because I would want to start doing the research, getting to know the players when matters come up, when negotiations need to be held, make sure that everybody is at the table and is fairly represented. One thing I can add here is I think we can say that the middle class, especially if we want to use that term, let's just say that wages have not grown the proper way in this country for probably 40 years at this point. And adjustments need to be made globally across the country. So we'd have to make sure that we're being fair, that everyone gets the right pay for the work, that there's equality there as well between men and women. So there's a lot of facets to this. I'm not going to pretend that I know them all. I just know that I would do whatever research I need and make sure that I have the right information given to me by the right parties to make sure that I can talk it over with the other council members and then talk to the city departments and come to fair conclusions and make sure that everybody's treated equally and fairly.
Okay.
Can everybody
Okay, I'm going to skip on to another question, but in front of you, you have scratch paper and a pen that I gave you. Write down, if you have an idea of something you want to talk about later, at the end, you'll have a final statement, and you can put in some of these things that maybe we didn't go over. Okay, Julia, what is your position on fracking, oil and gas activities within Thornton, and how do you plan to address environmental and public health concerns in regulating such activities?
Thank you. Julia Marvin, candidate for mayor. So let's start with talking a little bit about the history. So Senate Bill 181 passed back in, it was either 2018 or I think it was 2018. And that really, what that did was it put control back in the hands of municipalities for a lot of the oil and gas activity. And so what was really interesting is after that, we had our 2019 municipal elections, and we saw oil and gas pour so much money into these elections. The current mayor, they spent about $80,000 to make sure that she won that seat. You know what? And we've talked a lot about special interests, and that's something that they got their money's worth, right? So we have more oil and gas activity than we've had in a long time. It has been very favorable to oil and gas. You know, we just the majority on City Council just approved 10 new fracking wells just a few months ago. So I think what's really important about this is that and my belief in it is that we have a responsibility to protect the health and safety of our residents. That needs to be our #1 priority as a city. And so I think we can all agree that like some of this industry activity like fracking doesn't belong next to our schools. It doesn't belong next to our homes. It doesn't belong in our neighborhoods. And so that's one of the things that's really important, is that we're looking at the regulations for how close, oil and gas activity can be to our residents. I think the other part of it too is we need to increase the oversight on the industry. It's really important that we're working with the relevant agencies to make sure that the companies that are, when they're doing their oil and gas activity, that we are holding them accountable and responsible, and that they're following all of the guidelines that they should be following. So, like I said, I think that's the biggest thing, is really that we want to have, regulation, monitoring, and make sure that health and safety of our residents is the #1 priority whenever we're making any decisions related to oil and gas and fracking.
Okay. Roberta, would you like to take the same question? I'll repeat it for you. What is your position on fracking and oil and gas activities within Thornton, and how do you plan to address environmental and public health concerns in regulating such activities?
Thank you. This is Roberta Ayala, Ward 2. I'm candidate, and I am firmly committed to addressing environmental and public health concerns related to fracking and oil and gas activities in Thornton. Fracking has raised significant concerns for both environment and public health concerns for our residents, and I want to make sure that we do the best job we can to address those concerns. Some of the things that I'd like to do would be transparent monitoring of what's going on with the fracking wells that we currently have. We're in a situation where we have fracking going on now and fracking planned. We have 10 new wells up on 144th and Washington, so we have to make sure those deals have already been made, but we have to make sure it's done in the most safe way possible. And then we also have to, moving forward, limit the fracking that occurs in our city and eliminate it eventually to move to renewable energy sources as quickly as possible. But I'd like to make sure that those are transparent monitoring and implementing a transparent and comprehensive monitoring system. It's essential, and we should include regular inspections, emissions tracking, and the reporting requirements for oil and gas companies operating in the city of Thornton. The second thing that's crucial is community engagement. It's crucial that we involve our community in these decisions. I've been to those meetings, and I didn't feel like we were involved in it as we should have been. And I think that I would advocate for open forums, actual open forums, and discussions where residents can voice their concerns and provide input on the fracking activities that are occurring within the city of Thornton. The next thing I would do would be an environmental impact assessment, so require thorough environmental impact assessments for all proposed fracking and oil and gas projects within the city. These assessments should consider the potential risk to our air quality and air, wildlife, and public health. And one of the biggest things for me is updating our ordinances. Right now, we have handshake deals with these oil companies, and we need to have ordinances in our city that actually have rules in place so we can make sure things are safer for our community and our people. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go on with you and finish this up, Justin. What is your position on fracking and oil and gas activities within Thornton? And how do you plan to address environmental and public health concerns in regulating these activities?
Well, my position on oil and fracking in Thornton is very simple. No more well sites in the Thornton city limits. The people of Thornton have made it clear that we do not want to live near oil wells. These wells do not belong near households, they don't belong in our neighborhoods, and there's plenty of evidence out there to suggest that they're dangerous to the health of our community. I've served on the Adams County Planning Commission for just over 5 years now, and I've learned quite a bit about the planning process while serving on that commission. And in the planning process, you see a lot of zoning codes that are designed to separate different activities and uses separate industrial uses away from residential, away from government uses. And these are effective tools that local governments use to keep people safe and to build a strong and safe community. What continues to baffle me about Thornton's policy and in Colorado is that we make these exceptions for oil and gas. It's a fact that oil and gas is heavy industry. They use heavy equipment, they use dangerous chemicals, and there are many, many studies out there showing that this type of activity does not belong next to our households. But we as a city have continually ignored the standard that we've set for all other heavy industry. If we were to propose a heavy aggregate mine, it wouldn't be allowed right next door to a school or a local community, but we make the exception for oil and gas. No, I don't think that's right. And I would propose that we use the same tools for planning and regulation that we use to separate heavy industries like aggregate mines and, I3 resident industrial zones that we do on oil and gas. I don't see a difference, and in fact, I see oil and gas as potentially more dangerous than other industry. I also think that there is another issue around oil and gas that we're not addressing, and that's the air quality from fracking and also from the Suncor oil refinery down in South Thornton. We have to directly face the negative impacts of pollution from Suncor more so than other parts of Thornton. I don't think that these refineries are being responsible and being held accountable to following their own rules. So that's another issue I would intend to address when I get elected to city council.
Okay, thank you. Mark and Chris, if you want to get in on the discussion of oil and gas, save that for your final statement, and we'll go on to another question. With rising housing costs, how do you propose to make housing a more affordable and accessible item for Thornton residents, especially low and mid income? Chris?
Participation in the new development code update. There's actually a meeting happening right now in which we're unable to attend tonight because of conflict of schedule. But the last update was completed in 1993, and understanding the new costs with home building is essential. We have an ever-changing environment where we're introducing things like electric vehicles, and the implementation of having those charging stations within a garage is an added cost. So through the education and understanding how our country is evolving to include and go green is a big factor in knowing what those costs are. Last night, I was engaged in this process specifically. As mentioned, I serve on Development Permits and Appeals Board, and we had the pleasure of working through some suggestions on this development code and how it's going to be structured and changed. Specifically, one of my suggestions was copying a model of a city in New Jersey in which they established a fast track program. That fast track program essentially took or gave an opportunity for developers that were working with the city to go from 9 months to 3 months in the time it takes to get to shovel-ready or permitting positioning. With that, and reducing costs for some of those developers, we'll see an uptick in affordable housing. It will make it more attractive for them to participate in those type of programs within our city. My opponent doesn't have a background in real estate and development to my knowledge, but again, this is one of the things that I think I can bring to council because there is no representation of somebody that works in my profession on council. Repurposing buildings as well as improving transit for people to effectively and more affordably quickly commute around the Denver metro area should be a focus point.
Okay. Mark, would you like to speak on the same question? I'll read it again. With rising housing costs, how do you propose to make housing more affordable and accessible for Thornton residents, both low and mid-income?
Mark Gormley, Ward 3 candidate. I specifically would want to research and look at metropolitan districts and what effect they have on affordability of homes. I lived for 22 years in a regular taxing district, 2 different homes. About 3 years ago, I moved into a metropolitan taxing district. I got hit with my first big tax bill a year ago, and I was astounded that I downsized, moved to half the square footage, and yet I'm paying about 75% of the taxes, not half the taxes. The developers get away with rolling the infrastructure expenses into bonds, and the interest rates aren't necessarily what good market rates would be for such investment instruments, which is what they become. So specifically in my case, I moved into the townhomes up at 136 in Colorado behind King Soopers. So they're duplexes. I had an adjoining neighbor, and a year ago when we got our tax bill, the first thing she told me was that she's moving. She had been recently divorced before she moved in there, and she couldn't afford to pay the taxes. She immediately got a roommate, and for 9 months had that roommate helping her out with the expense, paying off that first big tax bill. And she put the house up for sale, her part, and has been gone for about 3 months. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona, because her daughter goes to school in Arizona. And well, there's other things I'd mention here, but I'll try and stay on task. Anyway, long story short, by my estimation, I'm paying about 25% more in taxes than I should. KB Home gets away with all that additional profit because they're putting the infrastructure expenses in bonds. The homeowners get saddled with that after the developer walks out, and they do not equally divide the infrastructure expenses among the costs of the homes. So when they sell the home at a fair market value, they have that much more profit. That needs to be looked at across the board. And then I think we need to work with the state of Colorado to rein in the metropolitan districts and the way that those bonds get financed.
Okay, we have a red card. And keep an eye on the
But you said we had leniency because we had so much time. So
yeah, that's right.
thank you.
Okay. Julie, you want to take that same question, and I'll read it again. With rising housing costs, how do you propose to make housing more affordable and accessible for Thornton residents, low and mid-income?
Yeah, so affordable housing, I think it's a issue that's top of everybody's mind, not just here in Thornton, but everywhere. But like I said, so when my husband and I first bought our first home, we bought a townhome here. We bought it for $225,000, which was a lot of money for us. The only way we were able to do that, we were never going to be able to save up enough for a down payment. But because we were able to use the first-time home buyers grant program, we were able to get into a home and start building, that equity and save money, that we weren't paying on rent, but instead we were, building towards a future. When we sold the townhouse 5 years later, it had gone up $125,000. That's the profit that we made. That really shows what's happening to our housing here, and so it's something that we need to address because everybody should have the opportunity to, have a stable and affordable housing. I think what we hear a lot, and what I've heard a lot when I'm out talking to people and knocking doors, is that there's a lot of people that their kids can't afford to live here anymore. When they're growing up, they're going to college. When they're coming back, they can't afford Thornton, and I don't think that's a type of Thornton that any of us want. We want to continue to have it be, community forward, and that people that want to live here can live here. So there's a couple of things that we can do, a couple of policies that I would really like to see happen. The first one would be for us to do a housing study so that we can really understand what our housing is and what it looks like, and then create a housing master plan, a strategic plan, so that as we're growing, we're really being considerate and thoughtful and planning for what that looks like. The other thing that we could do is start doing some inclusionary zoning. So that's when a development is zoned and comes in front of council, that there's a certain requirement for an amount of affordable housing that they have to have in the development in order to build. And that's something that we have control of on city council. Finally, I would love to see us do some community land banking. So that's when we would be, as a city, buying land, and then we could partner with our housing authority to build affordable housing on that land. And that keeps that housing affordable for us for a long, long time. So those are just a few things that we could do right now off the bat. I would love to see it happen. It would help. It has not had the support of a majority of council so far, but that's something that I would really like to see changed if I'm mayor.
Okay, thank you. Roberta, let's go on to the next question. Transportation and infrastructure. What is your vision for improving transportation and infrastructure in Thornton? How do you plan to address traffic congestion, improve public transportation options?
So being on the historical preservation group, it's been very eye-opening to understand that Thornton was built for cars. When we think about Thornton, it was built mid-century when everybody was excited about having a car, and that was the thing. Many cities like Thornton were built that way. And that's fun and exciting, but times have changed. We're in a situation now where our reliance on the automobile needs to be ratcheted down a little bit so we can make sure that our communities are safe. And we also need to start expanding our public transportation as that moves forward. So one thing I'd like to do is just build a better partnership with RTD. That's one thing that we can do to make sure that we address our transportation situation in Thornton. Pretty much any place, north of 120th doesn't really have a bus system. When I was growing up here, we had the 92, I think it was, and you could take it to the mall. We don't have those things anymore. So we need to look at getting some sort of transportation system, whether that's through getting more support through RTD, and we know that that's a struggle for our whole state, or for our whole metro area, RTD. But we could also look at partnering with other cities in our county or something more outside the box and look at transportation for the north end of town, for public transportation options. And then also, again, back to community engagement and seeing what folks need. I know that there's been a lot of conversation when I've been to different forums and different events here in the city where folks, especially folks that are aging and don't have the ability to drive anymore, are looking for those transportation options. And so we do really need to collaborate with our community to come up with those options for transportation to local events. Being on Tashco, we have all these cool things we're planning, like Dia de los Muertos and a movie in the springtime, and that's been an option that some of the folks I work with have brought up, is how do we get transportation for folks to be able to attend these events? So those are a few ideas that I have about transportation in Thornton.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's, Justin, let's do that same one for you, the transportation and infrastructure. What is your vision for improving transportation and infrastructure in Thornton? How do you plan to address traffic congestion, improve public transportation options?
Yes, as many have said already, Thornton has traditionally been a car-driven city, like many of our cities around the Denver metro area. But Ward 1 is in a very unique position because there is plenty of options for public transportation. Some of them are really new. We've got the large hub at 88th and I-25, and I remember riding the bus down to downtown every day when I used to work at the Denver Regional Council of Governments. In fact, the proximity to that bus stop was one of the reasons why I chose to live over here in South Thornton. But COVID has since really changed the landscape of public transportation, and we seem to be in a downward spiral of providing services and also demand for services. But the irrefutable fact is that South Thornton is strategically placed around these excellent hubs with a lot of opportunity. One thing that is missing, though, and it's problematic throughout Thornton and in Ward 1, is the last mile. And the last mile is a term that planners and transportation engineers use to talk about the problem that we have in getting from our houses or on our destinations to the transportation hub. We have the N line. It's a beautiful station in original Thornton. We also have that 88th and I-25 hub. But to get there is a challenge. And so I would advocate for solutions towards that missing mile, last mile. One of them is fixing the sidewalks and the trails that we have. In fact, Ward 1 has a lot of problems with the sidewalks. Many of the sidewalks we have are not ADA compliant. In fact, one person has already been injured by a vehicle because the sidewalk was too narrow, was not wide enough to use their wheelchair. And the city responded by widening that sidewalk in that one particular area, but all over original Thornton, we have the same problem, and I'm worried about my neighbors and people who have a hard time walking or need assistance to walk. Also, the trail capacity. We need to provide more opportunities for bicycles, scooters, anybody to get alternate transportation for that last mile. And we just need to provide incentive. So the last thing I'll say is that this problem is the other side of the coin to affordable housing. We don't have enough dense transit-oriented development near our transportation hubs. And by doing that, we would provide people an incentive to use public transportation and if we combine that with improved walking and biking infrastructure, we'll make Thornton, a leader in alternative transportation in Adams County and in Colorado.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chris, we're going to start with you on this last question. How will you collaborate with local school district, the local school district, to improve education and ensure that Thornton students receive a high-quality education?
I've already begun meetings with DTEA to discover the needs of the school districts. The biggest need is staffing and recruitment, facts. The teacher prep program has decreased 40% in the past 9 years, and several schools have already closed that program. COVID pushed educators late in their careers to early retirement, given the difficulty of the job at the time. And additionally, we can help provide wraparound programs for kids that ensure the basic needs are being met, to include healthcare and a safety net outside the hours of school. A grumbling belly, an unsafe home, health issues, they don't stop when the bell rings. Investing in these resources will make Thornton an attractive place to keep hiring good educators.
Okay. Mark, you want me to repeat the question? How will you collaborate with the local school districts to improve education and ensure that Thornton students receive a high-quality education?
I'll start by saying, Mark Gormley, Ward 3 candidate. I'll start by saying that I've stayed in touch with Adams 12, specifically Horizon High School, even though my daughters both went through Horizon and have moved on over 2 years ago, my second daughter. I attend a monthly Horizon Improvement Team meeting as the community liaison. The way that structure works for those improvement teams, they need one person from the community, does not have to be and shouldn't be somebody who has a student in the school currently. So I've continued on with them, and I've been doing it for, I think it's my 7th year. So I appreciate Adams 12 in public education. My daughters went through, let's see, I had written this before, Eagle View, Silver Creek, Rocky Top, and Horizon High School. So I've got knowledge of those schools and the school district specifically. And what I can say is that I would do what I can to seek out those who I need to talk to, and then find out what they think, given that they have hands-on with the students. Some of what Chris advocated for, like lunch programs, I mean, that's a big thing. If there are families out there who can't afford meals, we need to figure out how to do that so the students can learn, because an unfed body means the mind can't learn and be fed. I'll do whatever I can. I mean, I love Adams 12 and all the teachers I'm involved with on those Horizon Improvement Team meetings over the years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Julia, we'll do the same question. How will you collaborate with the local school district, and how many districts are there in Thornton? Do you know?
Wow, really testing my knowledge. Yeah, we have Mapleton, Adams 12, and 27J, and I think we've got a couple of Adams 14. Yep. So yeah, so we've got 4 different school districts in Thornton. So yeah, I think, so to answer the question, so I think the first part is having good relationships with our school boards and our schools. You know, they're the ones that are making the decisions, and so, but you know, it's important that we have those relationships so that we can collaborate. You know, I think the biggest thing is that, you know, our kids and our families live in our city and our neighborhoods. And so what's really important is that we're making sure that they have safe and clean neighborhoods so that they're able to get to school, and that, you know, it's safe, that they've got sidewalks that they can walk on, that they've got roads that they feel safe biking on, that we have transportation options for them to get there. The other part too is, how are we supporting our kids after school? So, you know, how are we having what are we doing to make sure that we have programming for kids for after school? That could be sports, you know, it could be other activities. It could just be places for kids to hang out. That's something that we're really lacking here in Thornton. It's just places for kids to go and hang out. Like after 5 o'clock, where is there for kids to go? And so I think that that's a really important part of it too. The other thing is talking about some of the resources that they have at the home. So, you know, the other candidates have mentioned some things about making sure that there's, you know, accessibility to healthy food. Another part of it is making sure that there's access to technology. So that was something that we saw a lot during COVID was, you know, when everybody was doing their schooling from home, we have a lot of areas in Thornton that don't have good internet, and we also have, you know, families that maybe couldn't afford quality internet for their kids. So that would have been a really good opportunity for Thornton to have provided some resources and for some funds for that. You know, there wasn't support for that on council at the time, but that would have been one of those opportunities that we could have really help uplift our kids and our families during COVID. So I'd like to see us doing more programming like that to make sure that our kids are well taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Roberta?
Thank you. Yeah, so I am a product of Mapleton Public Schools. Like I said, I graduated in '97 from Skyview High School. And my kids, by the end of this year, will have 2 graduates from Mountain Range High School. So we've been through both those school districts. And when I lived on Riverdale Road, it was one of the little chunks where I went to Adams County 14 for a couple years. And so I've seen the the struggles of that school district, and I hope we can get to a better place to support them as well in Thornton, because they are just a sliver of our city as well. I think I agree with everything everybody else has said here too. Don't want to repeat that, but I was just thinking a little bit about the work I do on the Thornton Arts and Humanities and Sciences Council. And when I was in school in Thornton and Skyview, one of my favorite things was the arts. And so I would like to see more programs for kids to participate in things outside of school. I think when they have things to do that are fun and involve their community, they are able to thrive in school better as well, and it gives them just those opportunities. Also sports, like we have a lot of money that we've received from the Broncos Stadium, and some of that money has gone towards, so far that we know of, gone towards some programs for kids in the city, and some of it's going to our police force to implement some of those programs. But I think we can do a better job holistically of really looking at the programs we're offering to our children in our Parks and Rec department. I've heard tons of folks on doors that say they don't even know about the programs that we offer in the city, and I have to tell them some things I know about, and they don't get those communications. So I'd love to see more communication to families so they can fold their kids into these programs, so they can supplement what they're doing in school and just enrich their lives more, so they're more involved in their community. Thank you.
Okay, Justin, you want me to repeat that?
No, that's okay. I got it. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what everybody has said here already, and I think that there's some direct things that the city can do. You know, obviously the school boards are responsible for, funding and supporting the infrastructure to keep the students, productive and healthy and safe in the classrooms. But the city is responsible for everything near the school and what happens out, helping the kids thrive outside of school. And the kids can't succeed in school if they don't have all the opportunities to thrive and be safe at home and in the community. And so I think that a great opportunity for the city to help is by improving just like in the last question, improving transportation infrastructure directly around the schools. We recently heard a student from a high school come to city council, and by the way, I was very impressed with that student, asking the council for help to put in school zone lights in their community. And that's critical. I mean, it actually blows my mind that not every school has that infrastructure to support them, to keep them safe. And so we need to do that. We need to keep the sidewalks wide enough for students who need assistance in walking, or maybe they can't walk or just need mobility assistance. So transportation infrastructure is critical. Something that I think we should definitely support. I also think that the school resource officer program needs to be supported. Thornton has an award-winning school resources officer program, and I applaud that effort from Thornton, and it just shows that we need to have that relationship with the school boards, with the school leadership, to make sure that our officers are welcome in the schools and that they're actually doing a good job. Now, Thornton, of course, is so far doing a good job. They're winning awards, and I would just like to continue that program and make sure that our kids are safe in school. And I think the ideas that Ms. Ayala and Ms. Marvin have brought up about the city providing opportunities for after school is an excellent idea as well. So, yeah, I think the city has a big role to play there.
Okay. Okay, now I had these 30-second answers. I'm going to make them a little bit longer, maybe a minute and a half. And we'll go through these, and then we'll have, at the end, you'll have 2 minutes to wind up, mention whatever things you didn't get to talk about that you want to. And we may end up a little bit early, maybe 7:30. I don't know if that was okay with the powers that be. Okay. Justin, what initiatives do you have in mind to increase community engagement and involve residents in the decision-making process for the city's future? And let's give him 2 minutes on this one.
Okay, thank you. First and foremost, we need to bring back the old format ward meetings. Those meetings were absolutely critical to people in Ward 1 for communicating directly with the leadership and for engaging in the decision-making process. Several years ago, those meetings were taken away from us, and I hear over and over again from my neighbors and the people in my community that they miss those meetings. The meetings that we have not been an adequate substitute for us to have an engaging and thoughtful discussion with our leadership and to put forth ideas and concerns about the direction that the city is heading in currently. And so, first and foremost, in those meetings, I would encourage town halls and question and answer sessions from the community. We need to give the residents an opportunity to be heard. The reason why we have a lot of, stress and, concern from our residents at council meetings because all the other avenues they have to express their concerns and complaints and to be heard have been taken away from them. So the only opportunities they have are on the biweekly city council meetings. We demand more, and it's going to make our community safer. It's going to make us all, more comfortable with our neighbors. I also would like the police leadership to reach out to HOA boards and to attend their meetings. I think that the police departments have a lot to gain by learning from the leaders of the different neighborhoods and the different HOAs. And I would also advocate for more citizen-led boards. In the last 4 years, the city has actually reduced the number of citizen-led boards, therefore, again, taking another avenue for our voices to be heard away from us. And the response has been clear. The citizens are concerned and that they're not being heard, and bringing back some of those citizen-led boards would just be one step of many that we could take to improve community engagement.
Okay, next question, Roberta. Can you outline your long-term vision for Thornton? How do you plan to work towards achieving it over the course of your term? Well, this is for the mayor. Let's table that one. Sorry. What specific strategies do you plan to implement to encourage economic growth and creation in Thornton? Do you feel that Thornton is doing what it needs to do in order to clean up the PFAS levels in our water?
Is this the question about economic growth or?
No, this is that one. We'll save that one for Julia. Well, I'll read it again. What specific strategies do you plan to implement to encourage economic growth and job creation in Thornton?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have a few ideas, and specifically from talking to neighbors, it's always so great to talk with different folks in Ward 2 and hear their ideas about how our city's being built and what they'd like to see. And the number one thing I usually get when it comes to anything around shopping or eating is they'd like to see less fast food and less gas stations next to gas stations. And that's specifically in my neighborhood of Ward 2, we have a Maverick right next to a Conoco, and folks have said that the first thing that comes out of their mouth when I knock on the door. So I'd like to foster, like I said before, a more walkable city that will bring in businesses that are just a little bit more of the mom and pop, sit-down restaurant, bike-friendly areas that folks want to see. We have to build a city that has mixed-use zoning and pedestrian-friendly areas, and that folds into the whole idea of building a safer streets model where we have slow down the driving a little bit with roundabouts and safe places to walk. And when we do that, we'll have a more vibrant place to kind of build this area where we can have folks that want to open up businesses where you can sit down and have a meal, have a cup of coffee, have a beer, and then also maybe shop a little bit. And I think that's what folks want to see. And my plan to do that is to really look at infrastructure and look at the way we're building the city and implementing the mixed-use zoning more in the newer areas and redeveloping the older areas of Thornton so that we implement some of that mixed-use zoning and look at the walkability is really important. Just thinking about like our south end of town where I grew up, where I live now, it was built a long time ago. It's, you know, it was built the way it was built, but I think we have the ability to change the trajectory, but also keep the character of our town, and I think that's what people would like to see.
Okay. We have been asked if you would all move together a little bit so she can, on the live stream, she can get everybody on the screen.
Okay. Okay. I'm good here? Okay.
Is that good? I should say that now. Okay. We're sorry about all the people who didn't show up tonight, and we'll tell them what they missed. Okay, now where was I? Okay, we'll do Julia. Do you feel, this is the one for the mayor. Can you outline your long-term vision for Thornton? How do you plan to work towards achieving it over the course of your term as mayor?
Yes, thank you. So I've kind of talked a little bit about it, and we've talked about a lot of the issues that Thornton's facing, but really, I think at the crux of it, Thornton is growing really quickly, and we are at a really critical point of like, what kind of city are we going to be now, and what kind of city are we going to be in the future and for our future generations? And so to me, what that means is that we need to be really thoughtful with what we're planning and what we're building, and thinking it really about like, what do we want Thornton to look like in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, and what do we want Thornton to look like tomorrow? And so I think there's a couple of different things that go into that. I think part of it is that you know, and again, this is kind of what I've seen over the 4 years that I've been on council, is residents being ignored, their requests being ignored, working families like mine and like yours being ignored, and that's where we need change. We need people to be in the driver's seat. We need people to have a seat at the table. We need everyone to have a seat at the table to be making these decisions, because there's a lot of really great things about Thornton, and there's a lot of things that people love about Thornton, and those are the things that we want to preserve and protect as we're building a city for the future. And so that's things like, you know, people, it's a lot of things we've talked about tonight, but it's also some things that, you know, a few of the candidates have mentioned. You know, it's having more places for people to gather, more coffee shops, more restaurants, more places to hang out. It's having safe and clean drinking water. It's having, you know, revitalizing our south end of town and making sure that the north end of town has the resources that they need as well. And it's balancing both of those needs and making sure that everybody is getting what they need so that they're happy to live in Thornton and that they feel like they're able to thrive and live a good life. And so I think part of that is, you know, really being transparent with what the plan is and what the vision is and what I'm trying to accomplish. So it's having goals for, you know, 30 days, 90 days, the first year of council. And it's also working collaboratively, right? That's something that we haven't seen a lot on, you know, city council. And I think it's really important that we repair those relationships and that we all find ways to work together and find common ground, and that, you know, we all want Thornton to be a great place to live. And so, you know, how can we work together, and how can we invite everyone to the table to make that happen?
Okay, Mark, what are your thoughts on our water situation with Larimer County? Do you feel confident that we will get the pipeline built by the projected 2027?
Thank you. Mark Gormley, Ward 3, candidate. I'm trying to figure out where to start on this. I have a little story. I've been told that
I'll get 'em.
the pipeline is on schedule and is going to be in place by 2025. That was Jan Kulmann telling me that. So I'll leave that there. So I'm under the impression that we're going to get the water. What I was very happy to hear and see, I saw that article in the New York Times about how back in the 80s, they looked ahead and said, hey, we got to make sure we have water rights. So that's great. I have to say, I don't know a lot about the details of the pipeline other than the fact that there's a certain segment where people just don't want a pipeline in their backyard necessarily, or we're not necessarily going to get the exact water that's to be allocated to us. It might be diverted elsewhere and we might not get the right quality water. So we've got to make sure we fight for what really was spec'd out for us back in the 80s. But even when we do ultimately get that water, we can't just say, oh, wow, we got a lot of water. Let's just start going gung-ho with the development again. We've got to really come up with unique ways, make sure that people economize on their use of water, are very water conscientious and conservative. And the story that I was kind of smiling about was, I've been doing this ever since I've lived here. I have water jugs in my kitchen. If I need to get the water hot to use it at the sink, I run the water into the jugs until the water's hot. And then I use that water out on plants out in the yard or whatever else I need it for. So I think a lot about my use of water. So that's just one example. And then we need to worry about that water quality, the PFAS. One homeowner I spoke with is a scientist. And she told me already she has a filtration system in her house and she filters the water. She will just not use the water the way it is already. And she reflected back on the report that came out about a year ago. And I have that report and I didn't take it the same way she did because I'm not a scientist. So I need to learn more and then enlist the help of the right people, get the pipeline, but then make sure what we get is what we need to have and make sure it's healthy. And then we need to teach everybody. And I know I'm out of time, but I have to add one more thing. I just have to. The other thing I've done, okay, now I'm a culprit in this build out in Thornton. So my wife and I jointly bought a townhouse for my mother-in-law at one point. So that was one home. We first lived in a townhome south of 104th. So that was another townhome we had for just about a year. Then we had another new home. These are all new builds. Another one for 15 years, then another one for 7, and now I'm in another new one. But at each house that I had possession of, I made sure that I used or I planted as little grass as possible, and I was very water conscious about that. So one thing I love about Thornton is those demonstration gardens. We need more of those. We need to make sure, again, when we get the water, we're using it wisely. And then we need to teach residents how to use the water wisely. And we need to start removing as much turf as possible throughout the entire city. People need to start doing that because everybody's moving here. As the seas rise too, we are going to see everybody wanting to move here, and we have to be really careful, and we have to educate everybody. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I haven't forgotten Chris. It is often said that we have a division between South and North Thornton. What will you do to help to erase that division? How will you address imbalance in spending and investment? What would you do to prioritize to help end this division?
I touched base on this earlier, and I believe in generational investments. With that, what I was referencing earlier was how we address the needs of students within our school districts. By investing in the youth and the future of our in the future generations of our city, I think we create opportunities to, one, retain residents, but also stop this, I want to say invisible, but it's a very visible barrier between North and South Thornton. I do agree that the southern portion of our city doesn't receive the same resources, attention, funding, infrastructure as the northern part of our city. I'm very aware of Ward 4 and that we are in an area that is nicely built out, and I can't say the same for South Thornton. It's apparent, it's ugly. With that, though, and some ideas in which I would like to see is the promotion of new development and redevelopment within Wards 1 and 2. Candidate Martinez touched base on that earlier, and the struggles in which he sees in just navigating and transportation to those hubs for mass transit. But social programs help inside and outside of classrooms, residents, homes, and if we address the imbalance in the way that we treat our residents, it can ripple throughout the community in a positive way. So I'm open to more ideas, constructive roundtables in order to address those needs. But it absolutely should be addressed. My wife's grandmother lives in Old Thornton, and at 90 years of age, she doesn't have the same opportunities as somebody that lives north of 120th. That's apparent.
Okay, it's 7:15. Assemble your thoughts, and I'll give you each, well, let's say 4 minutes, and you can use it and tell some of the things that maybe you missed in some of the other questioning, what things are important to you, and 4 minutes. So we'll start in just a second. What? Would you like 5?
No, I was joking, but I can be long-winded. I'm sorry. I had one more point to make at the end of my last one, but I'll make it in my 4 minutes.
Okay. Okay. I guess we'll start with Justin.
Thanks. I am going to start by just adding to what Mr. Russell was saying about the division between South and North Thornton. And there are, first of all, I do disagree a little bit with what he said about the condition of South Thornton. I do think that it is an older community. I do think it's a beautiful community, and but the facts are that we do not have the resources available to us that some of the newer communities do. And there's some specific things that we can take as City Council to address this issue. The city has established these urban renewal agreement deals across the city, one for each ward, and what they are is they're special funds that the city uses excess sales tax to fund projects that remediate blight. So as you all know, South Thornton has a lot more blight, meaning old and abandoned buildings or rundown infrastructure than other parts of the city. And all of these agreements have a stipulation in there that say that the funds that can be provisioned to this account can only be put in there if there are specific projects to be done that involve debt financing. So that means that we actually have to take on debt and come up with a project and borrow money in order to get the money that we are allocated to remediate blight in our account to do that. And I think that's problematic for a couple of reasons. First, the process to obtain debt for a project is a long and arduous process, and it's not always, sometimes controversial, and it's not always, accruing debt is not necessarily always in the best interest of the city, even if it is well-intended. I believe that these agreements should be modified so that we can have some of those funds, not all, but some of those funds appropriated to be spent on smaller projects without necessarily accruing debt. These projects could be improving the sidewalks, I've mentioned many times, becoming ADA compliant, revitalizing streets and trailways, and these smaller projects would go a long way in improving the quality of life and safety for our residents, but also attracting new investment from private investors and development. The problem that we have in South Thornton is that the land values are low, because all the neighboring businesses are either run down, abandoned, or they're pawn shops, or places that traditionally have low land value and low property values. And by cleaning up the area, investing in these smaller projects, and utilizing our URA funds more efficiently, we could start to turn the tide. I think the cornerstone to changing this divide between South and North Thornton revolves around the Thornton Shopping Center. We need to be incredibly careful and specific on what we do with that property. I believe the future of Thornton is in South Thornton with revitalization, and the core of that is around the Thornton Shopping Center. If we can rebuild that area with a master plan that is incorporating the needs of our community, that provides a space for our families to enjoy the neighborhood, to enjoy nice restaurants, then we're going to increase the land values of our neighboring properties. And we're going to give incentives for those old properties to sell to developers who are interested in revitalizing our community. These are specific steps that we can take. It seems like a large uphill battle to change this, but it's not impossible. What it takes is the will for change. It takes collaboration with the community, and it takes vision. All of those things are what I'm bringing to the table as a council member for Ward 1. This council needs change in leadership for South Thornton. We need change, and we need somebody who's going to treat these problems seriously, and somebody with the vision and the will and the experience to make sure that it happens. And that's what I'm going to do. And so for all the people in Ward 1, I'm asking for your vote. I'm voting for change in South Thornton. I believe that we can make our community stronger and safer, and I will do that when I'm elected as your council member.
Okay, Roberta?
Thank you. Thanks, Justin, for that. I kind of see Justin as my brother in South Thornton, because as I told you all before, I grew up in Ward 1. I live in Ward 2 now. I've never really left the south end of town, and it's my home. My parents still live in original Thornton, and it'll probably be my home until I'm not on this earth anymore. So I look forward to working in our city no matter what happens to make sure things are better. But a little bit about myself: I'm a collaborator, I'm an organizer, and every day I work with folks. I work with working class folks that go to school online in my job with Guild Education. And I talk to people all the time about their struggles in America as working class adults going to college. But I also talk to our neighbors in the evenings when I'm knocking doors for Ward 2 to chat with them about what their struggles are in our town. And when I saw this question originally, the one about erasing the division, I thought, why would we erase the division? And I think we should celebrate our division. When I think about that, I think about, we have an old part of town and we have a new part of town. And a lot of times we think of the old part as, rusty or dusty or whatever we want to say. But I celebrate those things because I love that stuff. As somebody who's eclectic and just loves art and the humanities and things that are just interesting, to me, South Thornton, the way it is interesting. But we do need improvements, and we do need to make things safer and better for our community. And that includes Ward 1, but it also includes parts of Ward 2 as well. Our community is getting older, and we have so much housing in South Thornton and Ward 2 but we don't have a balance of places to meet up and eat. And, you know, I think about the places I meet with my community folks, and it's a very limited handful of places to meet up. We don't have a lot of it. So I'd like to see that change. When I think about just, you know, what I'd like to see change in our area for sure, it's the safe street stuff. We just had a kid pass away, and we had another kid that was tragically injured on Colorado Boulevard because our streets are built entirely too wide. This issue touches schools, it touches our families, our older folks, our younger folks that are just learning how to drive and don't always make the best decisions. We need to build streets that are safer for our community. We need roundabouts, we need traffic calming infrastructure. I've talked to probably about 4 or 5 families that have been met with tragic situations, paralysis, death, and head trauma because of the streets in our city being too wide and people just blasting through stop signs. We need to take a better approach to that. And I think also just love the city that we live in and be proud of every aspect of it, but just also take an approach where we all understand how we can help it grow and develop in the best way possible for our families and for our future. It includes a lot of different things. I mean, I can't go through all of it tonight, but I talked to so many folks, and I just want to make sure that your issues and your ideas are brought to the forefront. And so I am a huge proponent, and I'm a huge advocate for co-governance. I talked a little bit about that before, but what that really means is that we need to retrain all of our city staff to learn how to work with our community and not against them. And that, you know, that's city council, but that also includes like our city manager, all the folks in all the different departments, because we're here to work together to make this city the best it can be. We're not here to work against each other. And that's what I'd like to see is like a total shift in the way we think about things. So instead of thinking about division, let's think about unity. And that's really why I'm running for office, and I'm asking for your vote for Thornton City Council in Ward 2.
Chris?
Initially, I want to start off by doing a piggyback of that last statement there, because some of the things that she was touching base on has been brought to our attention from the Ward 4 residents as well. Speeding. It's a detriment to our community, and it's very prevalent. Recently, was working with Councilmember Karen Bigelow over an idea of implementing the mobile speed camera systems. We see those in downtown Denver. Those are those minivans that sit on the side of the roads, and they capture you if you're speeding, and they're very effective. I'll be the first to admit, I've had a ticket from one. I don't speed on Colorado Boulevard when I'm downtown now because of it. So these great ideas come from our community. This idea came from a community meeting this past weekend in which I had a meet and greet at. Unfortunately, though, what we see is great ideas go to council and to our city management, and those ideas die because of politics. That has to change. Secondly, I wanted to discuss a question that was not asked this evening, and it was one that we were told that might be asked. And it was regarding the homelessness response between the police and our Community Connections homeless outreach team. That team is doing exceptional work. I want to applaud and recognize and acknowledge them for what they're doing, because it is a necessity and it's very important. And the aid in helping the unhoused population. I think it's terrible that some people treat those individuals as criminals and want to call the police right away. That's not the way to address it. Some of these people have fallen on hard times for a multitude of reasons and or mental health issues, abuse. And the idea or the concept of arresting them is not a solution. It should be an aid and a way to help them. It's a way to show positivity within our communities. Their struggles, though, however, are because they're understaffed. They don't have the resources. I believe the staff is 1.5 individuals, and that half is representative of a part-time person. So I've had some conversations with the sheriff office to discuss a joint commitment across municipalities and broaden the universal response. so that the allocation of resources that is needed is shared and distributed. Moving the unhoused back and forth across city lines or municipal lines between North Glen, Thornton, or wherever, it's just not a solution. So I would like to see a lot of attention brought to that, and it's one of the reasons why I specifically brought that question back into conversation this evening, because I think there's probably a number of great answers from the other candidates up here in which we could address that. But in conclusion, these past 15 years, Thornton's become my home. And I've shared this story a few times when I'm talking to residents, that when I moved here from South Korea, the post 9/11 GI Bill did not treat me as a in-state tuition student. I was treated as out-of-state. So you can imagine at 22 years old, trying to afford housing, go to school, work. I didn't have any family in town. And the residents of Thornton, they wrapped their arms around me. They were regulars from my bar in which I bartended at, TGI Fridays. They gave me a car. I eventually bought that car from them, but I was walking from public transit up and down 120th to get downtown to go to school. It was a difficult time in my life, and the city embraced me and welcomed me. I spent all my holidays with the Thornton residents. They bought me birthday presents. They did everything to make me feel like I was family. So with that, I've lived in Thornton longer than anywhere else in my life now. I'm raising my family here. My business is here. I'm actively involved with the community as much as I possibly can be. And I want to ensure that my daughter, current residents, future residents, all have the same things that was afforded to me over the tenureship of my time being here, because Thornton is my home. Thank you.
Julia?
Yeah, okay, so first I'm going to start. One thing we didn't get a chance to talk about was community safety. I think it's important that we address it. It's a question that, we get asked a lot. So with that, I think, for me, what I really believe is that everyone deserves to be and feel safe. That's a couple of things. So keeping our community safe is about holding the folks accountable who are committing crimes, and also supporting our police department. And we do have a great police department here. They're very focused on community policing and providing high quality police services. And so those are both important things. But what I think is really important is that we're looking beyond that, because for far too long we've relied on policing for everything, while at the same time underinvesting in other things like our public housing, our infrastructure, our schools, and healthcare. And this has caused decades of harm to our Black and Brown communities. It's caused decades of harm to our long-term residents, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so, when we can ensure that people have a stable place to live, a dignified job that provides economic security and access to opportunities and the resources that they need to care for themselves and their loved ones, we're building the structure and communities where we are safe and where we have everything we need to thrive. And so that's kind of my vision on what community safety looks like. It's a bigger vision, and it kind of fits into my bigger vision for the city. And like I said, so that vision for the city, we need new leadership. My vision involves that change. It involves transforming city leadership into something that's more accountable, transparent, resident-focused, where the needs of working families are at the forefront of our decision-making process. Like I said, my husband and I have lived here since, 2016. I spent a lot of time here. I grew up, my parents were very much working class. They owned a pizza restaurant. I started working when I was 15 at the pizza restaurant. Fun fact, they wouldn't let me cook pizza. I'm a terrible cook. So they had me on the phones talking to people. I love to talk, so it was a great job for me. But like I said, that's how I grew up. And that's that's what we need to focus on, is how we're supporting our residents and our working families. And so our policies should be designed with those in mind, from creating affordable housing initiatives to economic development programs, and creating local job opportunities. And I think when it comes down to it, what I want to say is that I really want to serve as mayor of Thornton because I have a deep passion for this community. That's what led me to run in the first place. That's what's leading me to run for mayor. This isn't a stepping stone for me. I'm not looking at what's next. I really want to serve the community, and I want to make it a better place for all of us to live. My strongest interests are in fostering positive change and addressing all of those pressing issues that we've talked about tonight. That's housing, it's our economy, it's the cost of living, it's our schools, it's all of those things. And like I said, those are big problems, but we can do something about it, and we can all solve them together. And I really believe that my effective leadership can make a significant difference. So serving in this position will allow me to use my skills, my knowledge, and my dedication, and that will help us create a brighter future for Thornton. We can build a better Thornton, and we can do it together, and we can do it so that every resident can thrive and enjoy the benefits of a vibrant and inclusive community, and that's what we're going to do together. And so I really hope that I can count on your vote in November. Again, like I said, it's really important to me that we're building a mayor's office that is transparent and accessible to people. So you can find out more about me and my platform at juliamarvin.com. You can also call me at any time. My personal cell phone number is 720-295-4024. I love talking with people, and I love hearing your ideas. So please reach out at any time if you have any questions, and I'll be available after this tonight. So I just again want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for allowing us this opportunity, and thank you to everyone for being here.
And Mark.
Thank you. I want to clarify before that clock starts. We get 4 minutes. Is this including our final remarks that we were supposed to prepare for 2 minutes? So we get an extra 2 minutes on top of our closing. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. 4 minutes, we're done. Okay. So, because I have something prepared, and then I'll do the myriad.
Well, we're doing
things.
fine on time, so I could be talked out
Okay.
of.
Well, yeah, then I'll have everybody looking at me.
And I also have 2 questions from the audience at the end, so.
Okay, good. Okay. First, I want to say I'm getting too comfortable up here, and I hope the 5 of us are up here in February looking at each other. That's what I want to see. Okay, so I've never been back here before until tonight. All right, so I'll read what I have prepared and then hopefully get a few other things in. I served 3 times on the Thornton Assistance Funds Committee. That was an entirely voluntary position. I spent my entire weekends leading up to each beneficiary organization interview session, reading the applications and the submitted materials, and researching the organizations online, on their websites, and elsewhere. I made sure I had a sufficient knowledge base so I could ask questions, weigh in with the other committee members, and ultimately vote on what financial support each organization would receive from the city. I will similarly put in the time, do the work, and confer with the other city council members regarding all issues and business that comes before city council. I don't have humongous signs along the roads. I'm not financially supported by special interests. I'm not bought and paid for. I'm responsive, I'm dependable, and I am of, by, and for the people. That's why I'm here. Like the old BASF commercials, for those of you old enough to know, I didn't make the city of Thornton, but I will help make it better. I will help make things right. Then I have a few quotes here I wanted to leave everybody with. Leave every place better than you found it. That's attributed to Robert Baden-Powell. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That's Robert Swan. And then a radio show host I listened to out of WBAI in New York. I was born in the Bronx, grew up in New Jersey, and I still listen to WBAI every Saturday and every morning to listen to, I'll just go from here. So Bob Henley says this quote at the end of his show every Monday: "We get the world we fight for." So I've taken that to heart, and you have to be here and you have to fight for what you want. And that's why we're all here. because that's what we need to do. And again, I hope the 5 of us are all here in February. I'm the only logical candidate for Ward 3. Please help me be the change for Thornton. Vote for Mark Gormley. So now let's see. I have a myriad list here. I'll try and get to them. I didn't get this at the end of my last diatribe. I don't have any grass in my newest home. No grass at all. Not just because I don't want to mow it, because I'm looking towards retirement someday. And I still work full-time, and now this is a full-time job. I was warned by pretty much everybody here. This is a full-time job. Just getting on to a full-time job, and if you're working, it's that much more. So I don't have grass. I'm not pouring all that water on that. I'm trying to be very conscientious. I work in Thornton for an employer whose corporate headquarters is here. I've been working for them it'll be 2 years in December. And one of the things I love about my employer is their motto or their catchphrase. Yeah, their motto. It's creating connections that empower people. And that's what City Council needs to do. We need to make sure that, and the company does electrical transmission distribution lines and builds solar power plants and stuff. So they're talking about connections, but at the same time, connections that help people. Just what we need to do as City Council people as well. So I'm red carded out. I'd love to keep going, but I won't. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 questions from the audience, and I think I'll just toss them out if you have some thought about them. It's only 20 to 8, so we have enough time to to answer them. The first one is, taxes are spiking. How do you plan to reduce the property tax burden on Thornton taxpayers? And the other one is, how would you approach the manufacturing and fabrication businesses, technical also, to set up intern programs for high school students to then transition into jobs with those same companies? Anybody want to try one? One about property tax burden.
Yeah.
And the other about the businesses, technical businesses.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the
Okay.
property tax one. So,
Okay.
so City Council, we don't have a lot of control over the property taxes. That's at the other levels of government, both the county and the state. So I think what's really important there is that we have good collaborative relationships with our other elected officials. So it's important that we're working with our other levels of government to help represent our people. So that's something that, I have relationships. I've worked really hard over the past 4 years to build relationships with our county commissioners and our state legislators. And, because of those relationships, we've been able to, I'm able to help represent our community at another level. So when something's going on at the state or the county, we'll get a call, myself and, like Councilmember Bigelow, Councilmember Henson, we'll get calls from the other elected officials saying, hey, like this is coming up, how does it affect Thornton? So that's a really big opportunity for us to help support that issue, is to tell the stories and explain to the other decision makers of what's happening here and how these things impact our residents. It kind of goes into a bigger issue too, right, of cost of living. We're seeing cost of living skyrocket. Groceries are way more expensive. When you used to go and you'd spend like $20 at the store, now it's like $50 and for the same amount of groceries. So we're seeing a lot of cost of living spikes. And so what the city can control is the things that we can raise the rates on, or what we can decide not to raise the rates on. And so I think it's really important, especially in times like this, that we're being very, very mindful and very careful with the rates that we're raising and why. high. So that's anything from our water rates, that's to our, our rec centers. That was something in our active adult lunches. Those were things that have come up the past couple of years. Are we going to raise the prices for our seniors that when they're having lunch at the active adult center? Something I voted no on because I don't think that we should be raising our rates on things right now because people's pocketbooks are being hit so hard already. So, there's a lot that we can control with cost of living and that we need to be doing everything that we can to help with that so that people have more money in their pockets.
I'll answer the second question about the, could you read it again for me, please?
How would you approach the manufacturing and fabrication businesses? I've turned my mic off. Technical businesses to set up intern programs for high school students to then transition into jobs with those same companies.
Yeah. So I've been working in a technical role for most of my career. I'm currently working as a software engineer. I've been doing that for about 7 years. And before that, I was an economist for the Dr. Cog. And so I know how, I would have loved to have an opportunity like that as to start off my technical career with a technical position. And I think what this question was really getting at, or partially getting at, is that we can't have technical internships without these advanced manufacturing and engineering and technology companies in the city of Thornton. So I think the first step is to, encourage and incentivize these businesses which provide good paying jobs, innovative they foster innovative communities, and they make overall net positive contributions to our local economy. We need to figure out a way to attract these businesses to Thornton. And a big part of that, the city plays a big part of that in terms of building the infrastructure and investing in the community to provide top quality services. So we want to make our schools the top quality schools in the state. We want to make sure that the infrastructure surrounding those schools is also excellent, so the families and the kids feel safe and they can thrive in their education environment. And those things all together, plus many other things, will make our city more attractive. And so when we do finally land these technical firms that would, I think, benefit our community, we want to partner with them. We want to build that relationship with them. And I think the city can provide incentives to those companies for, helping our students get internships there, whether it's recognition for their hard work. I know the city already does recognize students when they succeed and they do well in national competitions. I think it would be great if we could recognize those same students for achieving internships and partnerships with those companies that the city will try to attract. Having those internships could be another avenue for building that relationship and building that partnership. And also, I think the city could, find ways to provide some internships of their own that could help advance technical careers. The city has a lot of technical opportunities, whether it's through our own technology program, through planning, economic development, engineering. All of those areas are opportunities for students to learn valuable skills that could be applied to these high-tech manufacturing and technology firms. So it's difficult, but I do think it's something that all ties together the world of economic development and helping our communities thrive.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would also, just to piggyback off of what both of them were saying, I guess there's 2 points. With the property tax situation, I think a lot of times folks see their tax bill and don't realize the metro districts that Mark brought up earlier that are rolled into those tax bills that come in. And, we see the bills come across our desk as working families every year, and we may not know all the ins and outs of that. But a lot of times folks are impacted by metro tax districts. And those are decisions that are actually made by city council. And I think as city council, we have to take a deeper look at developers and what they're doing as far as developing in our city and how those things are structured. One of the first calls I got when I ran for office the first time was from an elderly woman, I believe it was up in Amber Creek, and her metro tax bills were absolutely ridiculous, and she was just really concerned about having folks on council that would really look into that. So I've done quite a bit to educate myself, and just want to make sure that I'm coming from a perspective for our families and not from just the perspective of developers and what their profit's going to be at the end of the line, because we have to make sure we're building a city that's affordable. And it hits back to everything else Julia was saying, which is like, we can definitely make better decisions as a new council on upcoming development in those areas, but then also make sure we're having affordable services in our city so folks can enjoy their life here as well. When it comes to the technical jobs, you know, I didn't get to talk much about my union experience. I was a union organizer for over 7 years with healthcare workers and mental health care workers. And also as somebody who works in education, I organized a union from the ground up. But one of the things I've learned in working in labor for so many years and just knowing all the folks I know, I grew up in a union household, are the apprenticeship programs that are offered through our unions. And I don't see us utilizing those as much as we should. I know my stepson, we have a blended family, and my stepson wants to become an electrician possibly, and I've been pushing him to really check out the IBEW Local 68. I grew up with that because my grandfather, or my godfather, is a union electrician, and so I just believe strongly in utilizing those apprenticeship programs because they're holistic, because they take into account workplace safety, transparency and accountability for the workers, and also just educating workers in the best way possible. So just to piggyback also off of what Justin was saying, I'd like to see us fold in that cheese as well, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
I just want to say that Roberta just nailed it for me on both counts. That was great about the metro districts, and then bringing in what the unions can do for apprenticeships is great. I actually went through a 6-week apprenticeship program myself between jobs because I wanted to learn, and it was phenomenal. I was astonished at what I learned in that environment from the union members. So.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you, 5 of you, who showed up tonight, and we appreciated your comments, and good luck on the coming election.